Welcome once again to this program. So, I mean, in the first session, yeah, obviously some amount of it goes away in introduction, and also to getting in, it's like an expectation setting kind of. So, we definitely take some time here so that we get the right kind of customization. Okay, now let me give you a little overview of these 5 sessions. What is it? What are we going to do? Okay, now this program comprises of 5 sessions, and in today's session, we would be trying to actually lay the foundation because looks like a lot of you definitely are, I would say, not very much into this role of familiar, but yes, kind of aware. So we would be setting that foundation, what it is, what determines compensation, what are some of the components, equity. We'll talk all about it. In the second session, we will be doing something called how do we establish internal equity, and we would be explaining. Right now you might find, hey, what are these words? Okay, so how do we establish internal equity? We will be using certain tools and techniques through which we would be evaluating the roles, which is called job evaluation, to establish internal equity. In the third session, then we would be talking about market pricing, salary surveys, then how do we actually find out at what percentile is this organization. So we would be doing what we are trying to say, hey, how are we with reference to the markets? How are we, which is called salary benchmarking, all about salary benchmarking. Okay, a lot of quantities involved there. In the fourth session, which is very, very critical, we would be talking about designing, how do you develop a compensation structure? How do you develop your pay line? How do you develop compensation strategies? So we would be using a very critical statistical tool called regression analysis, through which we will be able to design and develop our own pay structure. We'll be using linear regression. We could also use exponential and polynomial depending on the data. But yes, we will be doing in detail, how do you actually design these compensation structures, what kind of a midpoint differential you should be having, what kind of a salary differential between ranges you would be having. So the entire science behind it, and also dealing with dealing with what we call it as, how do you establish individual equity? That is, how do you design SITs, that is short incentive plans or long-term incentive plans? How do you design the entire design structure of this variable pay plans? And then in our last session, we would also be looking at session 5. How do you then link rewards to performance? Then how do you communicate all our compensation strategies, etc.? So it's quite what I would say, it's a very in-depth kind of package. So you will also have to do a lot of reading. Before you come to the session, I would really recommend all of you to read all the reading material which Wilma's Merit Consultants would be mailing to you, because what happens is it helps you to actually then comprehend quickly, because we only have a window of 3 hours. So I would be able to actually then, go faster and give you more if you actually read and then prepare yourself. So hopefully all of you have read something about what we are going to do in the session 1. I hope so. Huh? Can I have a show of hands? How many of you have actually gone through what are we going to do in this session? Because Wilma has sent a lot of reading material. I hope some of you have at least read through it. Okay, all right. So as I said, what are we going to do in this? We are going to do in this session, trying to create that background, create that understanding, and do in terms of what are the internal, external factors which determine compensation. Then we will look at all the components of a compensation system, and then we will also look at the equity principle. All right. Okay. So having said that, let us understand. I want all of you to be really very interactive, and please unmute yourself and respond, and that's how you will be able to learn. Okay. How do you know that your compensation is working for you? Say, for example, in your organizations. Any clue? How do you know that your compensation is working for you, or you are there on target? Any response?
So it will be evident in multiple ways. It will be evident through employee satisfaction surveys, the kind of rating we are getting,
Okay,
plus
good.
the retention rate of good customers.
Absolutely, retention rate. And then anything else, much more concrete, where you can do even HR analytics on that?
Yes.
I'm just giving you a clue as well.
Yeah, so one is, as Mr. Patil told, I think the attrition rate, the motivation level, the satisfaction, what he told, but yeah, the motivation levels of the employees.
So therefore, my ESAT shows that people are very, very happy, motivated, etc.
Correct.
But that does not correlate. When I take hard data, it does not correlate. My satisfaction index does not correlate with the productivity. Then what do I say? You getting me? Huh?
Yes. So the question is, the satisfaction level is not correlating with the productivity data.
Productivity data. So somewhere people are not performing, right? That also gives you an indicator. What are people not competent? Are people not motivated? They don't want to work. They don't. So therefore, compensation is like a black box. You agree? Compensation is like a black box to most of us. Okay. So and why do you think in today's times that, let me stop sharing and let me just do why do you think it's so important for us today that why most of us, like all of you, are very, very keen to do this program? Why do you think compensation is very, very critical? Anybody? That makes it, why do you think today, why are we really, why is compensation critical for us?
Because obviously, again, if your compensation and benefit structure is competitive enough, it will help your organization in multiple way. For example, you will able to attract top talent from the market for business critical positions. You will able to engage your employees for a longer time. You will able to retain them. And if compensation is good, then definitely to some extent it will also affect the achievement of organization's goals and objectives. So probably organization will get competitive advantage. So these are some direct, indirect ways by which
excellent. You are there saying that, hey, I'm able to attract talent. Compensation is critical because I have to attract talent. I also have to motivate my talent. Okay. And not only motivate, I have to also then retain my talent. It's not enough that I have just attracted the talent, but I also should be able to, they should be able to perform and retain. But yes, having said that, the most important thing why compensation is critical, think from the finance perspective.
Yeah, so the correct.
It's a great investment,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Do you know, typically in your own organization, what is the wage cost, the ratio of wage cost to your operation? You get me? Most of the organizations today, in most of the knowledge-based organization, anywhere between 50% to 70%. So what does that signify? What does that signify? You are investing 60 to 70% of your operation budget So it's a lot of investment. So when you invest so much, you have to get your value, right? Are you seeing that correlation? If you are investing so much of money, of your 60 or 40% or 50% of your operation budget, you go back and just check what is the ratio of the wage cost in your organization to the operating budget, okay, or wage cost to turnover. See that this is a huge investment. So when you are investing so much, so obviously if you are not getting, your Ram was mentioning about achieving business goals, but I will put it in more quantified ways, like if you are not getting your productivity in figures, right? If you are not meeting your targets or over and above them, then what happens? You getting me? So the question here arises, are you throwing money? Are you overpaying? Are you underpaying? How do you know these questions? So therefore, in fact, today, if you notice that in such competitive times where this large investment has a huge impact, guys, let me tell you, even 1 or 2% of a wage cost makes an impact on the profit margins, on the cost price. Yes or no? Yes?
Yes.
So therefore, if you are not able to get value out of it, then is it working for you? So what is the best kind of a structures, etc. And in today's times, most of the competent people in the COA are trying to understand, hey, if we are actually then investing so much, which is a ratio of the wage cost to the turnover or the operation budget, are we able to achieve our business goals? So what is the kind of a structure? Okay, are we paying more money? Are we paying less money? How do we know that? So you need, it's like a black box. So we need to understand the maths and science behind this compensation structure. Let me tell you, I'm sure in most of your organization, what happens? The business tells you, hey, oh my God, we've lost this critical person. We have to hire him. Then what does the HR do? Because there's a pressure from the business. Okay, guys, let us find out. So XYZ. So let us find out where can we get guys quickly. Then they will find out, okay, oh, this guy is available, but this guy is asking for so much of money. Okay, but the business says we want him as of yesterday. All right, let us take this guy. He is good. And then you are paying whatever he asks. So what are you paying more? Are you paying less? Are you sure is the right salary you are being paid? So these are some of the challenges on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure most of you are having, like maybe an HRBP if you are managing talent acquisition, etc. Hey, how much to pay? What to pay? Right? So these are the key questions. And what to pay that it will really motivate and attract my workforce. Okay, or if I'm paying a new hire more than what a person is getting for the same job within the organization, hey, there's a huge conflict. And I'm sure most of the organizations have this challenge. Do you have? You are always paying more for a rehire where you are getting him at a higher cost as in compared to the same job being done internally by another person.
Absolutely.
Huh? And then the guy who's doing very well and says, hey, but I'm getting lesser than him and I'm doing the same job. So the question of equity, right? Have you heard about equity, guys? Equity
Yes,
means
yes.
equity means I'm not saying equality here. Okay, no. So people should not feel, hey, equity means equality. So if, say, for example, there are 100 people in an organization and I have 5 million to divide the budget, then I'm going to equally divide it between all the people. Can I do that?
No.
No.
Can salary be like that? It can't be, right? Okay. So that is a little bit to set the context, to make you feel, hey, what are some of the challenges on the ground when we talk about compensations? Okay. Where do you fit them? Which pay scale do we fit them? At what level do we fit them? Do we do it beyond the midpoint, or at a max level, or before? So these are some of the challenges when we hire people. So what is the basics? We need to first of all understand today that, hey, what are some of the factors in general which impact compensation? Okay, so when I'm going to talk about what are some of the factors which impact compensation, please reflect on your own organization while we are talking that what are some of those factors which are impacting the compensation. So when we talk about what are the factors, we say there are two kinds of factors. A, external factors. Two, internal factors which impact compensation. Can anybody just give me a sense of what are some of the external factors which impact compensation? Some of your own organization. In terms of, in your opinion, what are some of the key factors which are impacting externally, the external factors which are impacting your compensation? Anybody?
So the compensation levels in the competitor companies.
Okay. Okay. So competition, right? Market forces.
Availability of the kind of talent we are looking for.
Absolutely. So can I say supply and demand?
That's true.
Of
Can be.
the labor or workforce which we are looking at?
Yes.
Okay. In the market. Okay. Then anybody else?
And the cost of living of a particular city or place.
Absolutely. So the COLA, cost of living index, right?
Yes.
Huh? So
Yes.
the economy also impacts recession, downturns in that particular industry. If you have a downturn in your own industry, that could impact compensation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then
is that basically the regulatory or the government policies?
yes. So one of the key factors which impact compensation is regulatory, right? Yeah, we are coming to that.
Also
Okay.
the inflation, cost of living.
Absolutely. When we talk about cost of living, then we are also talking about the inflation levels, right? Then what about technology? Does it impact compensation? Globalization and technology?
Yeah, it does.
It does?
Yeah, I think the organizations which are highly automated and tech driven,
Absolutely.
the reliance on the manpower is less, and obviously so the payout in terms of the compensation benefits is for the enterprise is lesser as compared to a company which is more relies on manpower or the workforce.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So let us actually now whatever do I take regulatory and social security, which becomes one key factor in external factor impacting the compensation. Let me just go to the blackboard and yeah. The blackboard, sorry. So what are some of those what are some of the major statutory or regulatory things which are in play in your own organization which impact compensation?
Minimum wages of a state.
Okay, great. So I'll just put here minimum wages. All right. Okay. Pardon? Okay. So I'm putting PF. All right.
ESIC, gratuity.
Okay. ESIC, right.
Bonus is there.
Yeah.
Payment of bonus.
Gratuity. Then
bonus.
gratuity, then yes,
bonus.
bonus. Okay, then
Might
Insurance,
insurance.
okay, health.
health,
It could
and
be
it
health
could be health
insurance,
or
yeah.
life insurance.
Health insurance. Okay, then what else?
Professional tax.
Absolutely.
Professional tax, income tax.
Okay. Yep. All right. So you have actually stated that there are statutory regulatory acts like say minimum wages. I could also add one more here.
Equal remuneration.
Equal
Remuneration.
remuneration, right? Then I could also add payment of wages. No? Now, so if you notice that these statutory or regulatory can also be divided into 3 categories. Okay? Now, primarily this category where minimum wages, equal remuneration, payment of wages, all belong to this category of wages. Okay. Now, health insurance, provident fund, ESIC, gratuity, bonus, all belong to this category of protection, right? And this, of course, is tax. Now, when we talk about this category of wages, now government has made it mandatory. Now, when we say minimum wages, that means it could be by skill or semi-skill as per state, etc. That you cannot pay. Why do you think these? Okay, first of all, let us understand. Why do you think these? What is the objective of these statutory or regulatory acts by the government for wages?
Safeguarding the interest of the people, working people.
Safeguarding, so that you prevent what? You are
exploitation of the
poor, right? So when we say payment minimum wages, so by that act you are actually ensuring that the employee gets, based on the skill or based on the semi-skill, based on the state, that he gets that minimum wages, right?
Yes.
When we talk about equal remuneration, what does it mean, or what does it comply?
People getting same kind of remuneration for the same kind of a job. There should not be any bias.
People are getting the same kind of remuneration
for same job.
Same job. When 2 people are doing the same job, irrespective of race, gender,
caste, color,
caste, irrespective of anything. In fact, this was actually done by the ILO, and we are also members of the ILO. Where we said, hey, you cannot. In fact, I don't know how many of you are LLBs. Yes, Amman is an LLB. You know, this equal remuneration. Let me give you this famous case of BD workers case. Is anybody familiar with the BD workers case?
I think it's for Maharashtra, BD workers.
BD workers, this wherein in fact for the it came up with for this equal remuneration. Yeah. What happened? Let me just cite the case. So what happened? The BD workers, in the BD workers, both male and female, the nature of work was what? Same. What is it? You roll a tobacco, dried tobacco in your palms and make it like a cigarette. It is the local cigarette, what we call it as. Okay, BD, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the BD. So you just have to make it like a pencil, roll it. So the nature of work is the same. That means the effort required, whether it's a male or a female, it's the same. But what the male was getting at that point of time, 100 rupees, and the female was getting about 60 rupees. Okay, so this famous case went to the court, and then the court said, hey, when the nature of work is the same, you cannot differentiate between male and female the wages. Okay, and they were made to pay even, you know, back wages of 5 years, last 5 years. Okay, so this is supposed to be a very famous case where it established this Equal Remuneration Act. Likewise, then what happened when BD workers won the case? These people the construction workers also went. But then the court said, in a construction, the male is typically doing, the nature of the work is different because the male is doing which needs greater effort.
More strength.
The female is only supporting, carrying something. So the nature of work, the effort is different. So therefore, you cannot say that the male and the female have to be paid the same salary. Okay. So that's how it is, the Equal Remuneration Act, which is across India, it's the same. Unlike the minimum wages where it is also varying from state to state on skill, semi-skill, etc. Okay. What do we mean by payment of wages when we say payment of wages?
So wages should be paid timely for the work done. It should not go like you have earned, but it should be paid. It should be paid.
You can't say that I will pay you, I will give you a bag of rice for the work you have done. Right?
Right.
So you have to pay it in cash. Okay. So therefore, these wage rules, which are very, very important, have to be complied with. Then comes the protection. They are mandated. Do you have a choice of ESIC, gratuity, bonus act? They are all protection acts. They are mandatory. You have to comply with it.
Yes.
But when it comes to health insurance and compensation, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this here. There is something called, you also have to have compensation. What does it mean? Say, for example, there is a factory worker. In the due course of working, he has lost the tip of his finger. He definitely gets a medical coverage and everything. But thereafter, he also gets a lump sum amount over and beyond for whatever he has lost, whether it's a small tip of his finger, depending on whatever the rates are.
The Workmen Compensation Act.
Absolutely. For that limb or etc. over and above, he has to get a lump sum amount. Now, all employees who come in the category of ESIC, you have to comply with it, gratuity and bonus and provident fund. Okay, so these are all those protection acts. Then comes this tax acts. Why do you think so? Now, professional tax up to the maximum of 2,500. Okay, so maybe I'll take some time in the next session how do you actually plan tax, etc. in detail, because I want to cover a couple of other things today, so may not be doing it in detail this tax. But however, now when we talk about salary, why is tax important? Now we have to be aware of tax as an HR person and as a competent person, because why? Now we have to understand, hey, what are those things which are fully taxable, partially taxable and fully exempt, right?
Yes.
When we know those things, then we are able to actually, then as a competent manager, you are able to then ultimately, what is the employee looking at? He wants in his hand, which is called net salary.
Net salary.
If you have a guy who's coming and say, hey, you are going to get 20 lakhs, okay, cost to the company, but actually in hand he gets such negligible amount to say, hey, what's the point? Everything is going for tax. So therefore, how do we structure salary? How do we do the structuring of compensation in a way, structure the elements in such a way that you are able to take the advantage of all those tax rebates,
Exempted tax.
as per the tax, and also then there is something called, and how are you taking advantage of even employment promotional activities? Like for example, I recall the time when I had actually gone to Dubai to do a consulting work, and I saw that, so typically we were doing a compensation assignment. I saw that the organization was taking a lot of local people. So, but if you know that, hey, if you are actually taking a local person, you also get the advantage of 6 months subsidiary, then you are getting a lot of salary being given by the government. So there are certain kind of benefits which also are given even in India by this Apprentice Act. So how many of us are taking the advantage of the Apprenticeship Act? Because what happens by that act, it promotes a certain kind of a skill training, employment promotion activities, which is given by the government of India. So as a component manager, what we need to understand is, hey, what are those acts I need to comply with, and what are those acts which give me the benefit of saving, so that at the end of it, hey, am I able to actually cut costs and give more for compensation, increase the budget. So we will actually, as we go by, we will see that, hey, how are we actually then managing to give better, design a better compensation structure within the budget given to us. Okay, so let me just go back to, let me just share the screen, and yeah. So we talked about how the wage acts, they actually prevent discrimination and also protect the poor from exploitation. And in the protection program, we have not talked about the maternity leaves and the vacational leaves, which are actually pay for time not worked, right? And then we are also talking about the Apprenticeship Act, which also helps us to give a lot of training to our employees at an entry level and reduce our costs. Okay, so these are any questions here with statutory and regulatory, guys?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So these are some of the acts which we talked about, if you see. And likewise, you have acts in every country which are almost similar, whether it's Dubai or whether it's USA and Europe. So you have all these acts which take care of, so that you don't exploit the poor and you are able to give equal remuneration to the employees. Now, we did not talk about collective bargaining. Wherever in manufacturing organizations, say even for pharmaceuticals, collective bargain also becomes one of those key external factors.
Union.
Does anybody have a little experience about collective bargaining?
Unions, the manufacturing.
Absolutely. Wherever there are unions, they impact the wage, because they do not go by what the market pricing is. They will go more by their wage agreements. So here, like for example, a lot of organizations, to try to reduce their wage costs, what do? They take a lot of contract labor in spite of having full-time slots. Now that creates a lot of conflict between what the contract labor and the permanent employees. I'm sure all of you know about this Maruti case, where you recall anybody Maruti case? Where this
head of HR was
absolutely
Manesar case.
Manesar case, absolutely. Yes. What do you think happened there?
The same issue was there. Like the unions, they were putting their conditions which was not approved by the management of the company, and moreover they were reducing the numbers and they were taking more of contract labors and all, so getting the job done and all. So they were stopped the work. There was strike and all. So I think
huge. So what they were essentially trying to do is pay less to the contract labor and take the similar amount of work which a full-time employee could do, and stopping the contract labor to join the unions. Okay, so typically what happens is to ensure that simple two-step principle, that whenever you enter into a wage agreement, ensure that you are also looking at peer wage agreements, where what kind of agreements have been there, what kind of negotiations, what kind of salary. To ensure that there is not much of a gap between the salary of a contract labor and a full-time employee who does the similar nature of work. Okay, so collective bargaining also has a huge impact. That is, wherever there are unions, They have because they don't go by any market pricing. They only go by the wage agreements. Now, we spoke about demand and supply of talent, right? Now, if you notice, there are some kind of mega trends, if you have noticed, which are impacting the compensation. If you have noticed that there are certain kind of sociological changes, then we also looked at economic changes. Okay, now what are the sociological changes which are impacting compensation? When we talk about, there are three kinds. When we talk about this blended work style, what does it mean? If you recall earlier, people would work for one organization. Look at Tata or anybody. You know, your parents or my parents, one organization. They would be there for 25 years, 30 years, till the time they retired. But today, if you look at youngsters want to work for 2 years, 3 years, then again go and study or go take a sabbatical. So there is nothing like long-term employment, right? Maybe they want to work in the morning and study in the evening. So there are a lot of blended. Are you with me, guys? So today there is, and also blended to the extent that two people doing the same job sharing. Okay. So going by these trends, we organizations also have to take an advantage in terms of, hey, does my organization need a full-time strength, or can I use such kind of a blended work style? For example, when I was the head HR for Tata Business Support Services, then we actually had huge attrition in our certain verticals, in certain processes. So then what did we do? We looked at our peaks and troughs. That means when is, you know, work peaking in a day, and when is work at its low ebb. Okay. So what did we do? We took full-time employees at a kind of an average. So where we could manage the peaks by taking in people, youngsters, by doing something called, you know, study while you work. So we took students who are doing their graduation, work here for 4 hours, go back and study. So it's a kind of a blended work style. I think most of the organizations like GE, most of the call center BPOs and KPOs started this blended work style because there was huge attrition, and this blended work style worked very well for them. Now, when we talk about portfolio workers, anybody who can understand what does it mean, portfolio workers? Anybody? So when we're talking about portfolio workers, it is nothing but, hey, do I need a full-time employee for this job? Can I actually have somebody who can come just work once in a week? For example, an HR consultant who takes care of your PF and gratitude, etc. There is no need for him to work for 24/7 as a full-time employee. So you could actually hire that person as a once in a week. He could come, look at the data, submit all your records, etc. So you can use, there are certain positions you don't really need a full-time employee. So in today's times, I think most of the organizations are also looking at portfolio workers. Now, when I talk about career deceleration, is that again, as a competent person, hey, can I actually use people who have also retired, but who still have, 4 or 5 years, who can still work for me? So what does it mean? Most of the organization, what are they doing? If you have, like for example, Reliance, it takes a lot of these scientists or people with, you need them with deep expertise or deep pockets of experience, retired from the public sectors. They take these people and at much lesser salary, but you actually get them with huge amount of experience. So you as a competent, you need to look at, hey, what is that I need? What kind of a workforce I need, and at what cost can I take? Okay. So when I'm talking about, we need to understand what kind of trends are going on, and then keeping that in mind, then use all these cost-effective measures. Of course, we talked about economic changes in terms of inflation. So what do you do when there is inflation? As a competent person, you typically will give a raise in the salary to the extent of percentage of inflation? What is it? Then when we talk about demand and supply, what do you do typically when there is a shortage of supply and there's a huge demand for that key skills or resources? Typically, what is the kind of a strategy we follow? Anybody?
Usually we pay more, matlab, we hire on that.
So do you pay more salary? That means you are actually differentiating just because there is, shortage of that skill sets, you are paying him more.
Yeah.
So doesn't the organization actually land up paying more?
Yes.
It happens, but because of market competitiveness, sometimes organizations, they have to pay. Otherwise, they will be behind the competition. Behind the
urgency of the projects also, which are getting delayed
so
because of this.
therefore, in such cases, so how do you manage them? That's a very interesting thing. So how do you manage them? Do we give them actually then market linked retention bonuses, or then we actually put them, because if you are actually giving high salary, that means he's all the time going to be on a high salary, right? He's already,
we put retention bonus kind of a thing, like, completion
exactly.
of 1
so
year,
when
2
we
years.
design the structures, we need to understand that there are two jobs. There are two people working in the same job. Then I cannot actually give somebody a higher base and somebody at a lower base. There's a huge conflict there. So there is no fairness or equity in the way I'm actually then paying people. Okay.
Moreover, somebody would also hire that person in between. If the shortage of resources there, some other company will also try to grab that resource by paying more than what we are paying.
Absolutely. So how do we do that? We are going to actually look at such situations when we are going to design pay structures. Okay. I mean, hard facts on the ground. So how do we manage those things? All right. Most important thing is globalization. What is the impact of globalization typically? Anybody?
Mostly maybe awareness of the cultures, about the working styles and the pay, wages, how it is going globally across same kind of a profile or something like that. Okay. Maybe.
The interesting fact about globalization is that, it coupled with the technology, it has a huge impact. So because of that, if you notice, in the 2000s, if you notice the telecom sector, they were able to actually shift jobs. So what had happened, that because of globalization and coupled with the technology, the jobs, they found that, hey, when I'm paying say $1,000 to somebody in US, I can shift that job to another country where at a much lesser wage cost. So that is the time when we started talking about cost arbitrage, right? Have you heard this word called cost arbitrage and labor arbitrage?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is cost arbitrage? Because the jobs are mobile, because the jobs can be shifted. So what had happened, if you recall, in the 2000, that is between 2004 and 2010, when the telecom sector was the one, so a lot of jobs shifted to India, all the call center jobs, right? At that point of time, what happened? The companies in India, BPO companies, are actually giving every 6 months an increment. So what I call it as, the stage of chaotic and rapid growth. Why were you giving that every 6 months an increment? Because, let's say, for example, a software engineer, how much does he get? About 50,000-60,000 if you say $1,000 there. So when you shift to that job, can you get an engineer, a software engineer, anywhere between 5 to 10 lakhs? Yes. Okay. So that is the advantage organizations had. But how much can they go up? Between the 2004 to 2010, after looking at rapid growth and consolidation, the increments began to stagnate. Why? Why did they stagnate? Because, say for example, if I'm paying $1,000, there is something called economic trip wire. What is this economic tripwire you see here? Economic tripwire. Anybody who can kind of give a meaning to it? Economic tripwire.
Slowing down of economy or something.
So, yep. So
That
this
the
is
value.
interesting. Huh? So economic tripwire is, so say for example, $1,000 is the cost, the wage cost of a US software engineer. Okay. Now, when I shift that job to India, it makes economic sense up to say 40% of that cost or 50%. They actually evaluate. Okay. Now, beyond that, it does not make any sense. Are you getting me? Say, for example, at that point of time, $1,000, I could still give somebody, say, for example, say something like, still it was economically viable to give up to $600 still. Okay. But beyond that, then it does not make economic sense. That means it is not viable for me to do that business. So therefore, initially, because there was huge talent and I could get it at a much lesser cost, I kept on increasing the salaries. But thereafter, because it didn't make much sense, then I had this economic tripwire. Now you will see that most of the software companies or even BPOs, their increments are not much. Earlier in the nascent stage, when 2 decades ago or even 15 years ago, there was huge increment. They would get huge increments. All that is because now it does not make much of a sense because, already you have reached that economic tripwire. Are you with me, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Because initially what happens, you had a huge pool of talent and it was available at a much lesser cost. But now, because the demand for that same talent is going up and up, so the talent pool is shrinking. So you cannot get the talent at the same cost which you got it 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I'm sure you must be seeing, like for example, management trainees. Every year companies hire management trainees or engineers from campus. Do you get them at the same price of year before, last year? No, because they keep increasing for various reasons. Of course, inflation is one factor, but even otherwise, because the talent is shrinking. Okay? Guys, any questions thus far?
Nirmala, can you please switch over to the slide mode because we can't see the headings of the slides. The presentation mode, sorry. Yeah.
Now you are able to see?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So in essence, what we did now so far, spending about 40 to 50 minutes, is trying to say that, hey, there are external factors which impact compensation. Okay. So we talked about our statutory, regulatory, we talked about collective bargaining. If there are unions, then we talked about all the sociological trends, and then economic and inflationary trends, that is talent and supply and demand of the talent. And also we talked about the economic tripwire which happens because of globalization and technology. Okay. Now most of the IT companies have actually taken advantage of this cost arbitrage and labor arbitrage, have shifted jobs from high cost to low cost. Even in India, if you see that most of the companies have moved away from high cost metros to tier 3, like earlier you would have them only in Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay, then slowly they went off to Pune. Now you'll find even in tier 3 like Cochin, Jaipur. Why? Because they're only playing on that cost arbitrage, because labor is available, the same skill sets are available at a much lesser cost. So ultimately, what is it in compensation? That at what cost is the skill sets which you want are available. Are they at a higher cost or at a lower cost? So typically what happens, even when you want to do business, if you have noticed, organizations, they go and do a pilot, scout for it in several locations at, hey, are we getting these, at a low level, entry level, and also 1 or 2 levels above? Because typically you like to take local talent. So is it available, the skill set? Because you don't want to actually bring them from different locations. Okay, it is not economically viable, right? So you will notice that there are huge development centers in Jaipur, in Vizag, in Kochi. Why? Because the availability of skill sets is at a much lesser cost. Now, having said that, I want you all to take just about 2 or 3 minutes or even 5 minutes, reflect back, and just write down 2 or 3 factors. All of you are working in different industries which are impacting the compensation. Okay, even if it is just one factor is okay. But what is that 1 or 2 external factors which are impacting your organization with respect to compensation? Are you clear about that question, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, just take a minute or 2. So it will give me a sense of, yes, that you have understood. Broadly, because every industry operates in its own ecosystem. For example, to give a cue, Aarti said she was working for a pharma company, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now in pharma, if you notice that what impacts compensation is a lot of this huge regulatory in pharma,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because you operate in highly regulated kind of a environment. Just to give you a lead. Yeah. So just think, pardon?
I have written, ma'am. I have done.
Okay. Everybody's written at least 1 or 2. Aman, you
One.
want to say? Yeah, tell
Yeah,
me.
one. Ma'am, in my case, in our industry case, it is the availability of the resource. Since I'm from a startup background, so there is a different mindset of people, coming and joining a startup. So they have a kind of a fear and all. So at times they negotiate on more salary and all, and primarily it is because of that. So availability of resource in my case.
So are you saying that because at the employee life cycle you are at a startup stage, so therefore you have to shell out more money because you need people with very good expertise. But considering the fact that you are at the just at the startup stage, so you cannot really speak about your brand, etc.
Yeah, not a brand name now. So because the people keen to work with brands, and also at times they are on a defensive mode and they tend to negotiate and all, but not with the startups. It usually doesn't happen that way.
But at the same time, in general, your skill sets, you require high level of expertise. So therefore, the talent pools you are looking at are such that you cannot afford to pay less. Is that so?
Yes, ma'am. Because we usually hire from NITs, IITs, and all. We try to hire, and not if not the number 1 resource available in the market, but then we have to at least get second to third, so that the product becomes more stable. So because the product itself speaks, so we need to invest in that. So salary for an IT company like us, salary and the marketing, these are the major expense areas. Apart from that, rest of the cost is very meager.
So we'll park this and then we'll talk about it when we are coming at the right time. Okay. So we'll okay, fine, great. Okay, anybody else?
I think one factor could be niche skill set.
Pardon? This is, you can actually say, because I'm not able to know who is speaking. Is that
Ram? So right now I'm not working for any organization, but I think one factor which I could think of is niche skill set. So particular skill set is very much in demand, and most of the companies are trying to tap these resources. So in this competition, they end up in paying more salary.
Okay, niche skill sets. All right. Okay. And there is Venkat. Venkat, You are working for Shriram Life Insurance. So what is one external factor which impacts your compensation?
So, Nirmala, I think so 85% of our workforce is basically the sales guys,
Okay.
who are who are on the field selling the policies for us.
Right.
Okay. The challenge that we actually are facing is one is getting the right uh, people with the right skill sets.
Okay.
And second is the high level of attrition which is there among the sales guys. And the reason for this is now life insurance is basically it's not a product as such. It is not a product. I don't know how to. It is something which meets the purpose only in case in the eventuality of the death of the main breadwinner or the person whose name the policy has been taken.
Okay.
So it becomes a big challenge for the sales guys actually to sell such a thing, sell a policy. And that's why in India, the penetration of life insurance market is hardly 3 to 4%. And even globally also it is 7%. That's it. So there is a lot of scope for market penetration as far as life insurance is concerned. It's quite fine as far as the general insurance, the motor insurance and all those are, but life insurance, unfortunately, people are not still.
They're not. So their perception differs here when they have to buy an insurance, life insurance.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Because everyone feels at least मैं 70 साल तो जी लूंगा करके.
So therefore, my question was, what could be one of the external factors which are impacting your compensation? You said high attrition, so that means you're all the time rehiring, which is itself a huge cost, and then training, right?
Correct.
So,
but these are internal, I would say. The external, for the reason that these guys, the sales guys, they keep on jumping, like how it was about 15 years back in IT companies. Similarly, in the insurance sector, the guys keep on moving from one insurance company to the other because their demand is there in the other end. So wherever they get little, and these are usually the guys in the junior management band, the frontline sales guys.
So therefore, here the question comes is, so there, because attrition is there, no matter what you do, there will be attrition, but then it's going to impact productivity, and also eating up costs. So you have to look at a kind of a model where, in fact, it will be a sourcing model itself. I don't want to get into that right away, but yes, as we go along, might help you. But yes, definitely, you have a huge, the internal consideration in terms of high attrition. Yeah.
Correct. That's a major compensation. But it's not only Shriram, but all the other life insurance. This is a huge challenge because the attrition percentage for the sales guys is at least 60 to 70%. You may not believe this, but this is the fact.
Yep. But right now I don't want to get into those. There are very interesting things about this sales people where we talk about variable pay, etc. So as we go along, we will talk about it because especially insurance, it has a huge elasticity, and then how do we actually then design a variable pay, etc. So we'll talk a little later.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, guys. So I think in essence, we've just understood that, yes, definitely every organization, because it has an ecosystem and external factors have a huge impact on compensation. Okay, so let's further, without any further ado, let's get into now. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, but let us get into this. First of all, what are the components? First, I'm sure all of you know what is compensation because the money an employer pays for the effort he has put in. So let us look at, first of all, some of the basics of compensation system and how does it, look. So we have to understand before we become compensation specialist, what are the components of a compensation system? Okay, so compensation is the value that an employee, of course, receives in the form of either money or benefits for the performance or efforts put by him. Now, typically, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, that a compensation, when you talk about a compensation system, it has two things, direct pay and indirect pay. How many are familiar with this? Direct pay, indirect pay. What is direct pay? Everybody is familiar with this? Direct pay, indirect pay? Yeah. So direct pay is everything related with cash, money. And indirect pay is everything related with your, what is it? Services, purchases, anything which in the form of kind, but not cash as such. Okay. So it's called indirect pay. Now let us first talk about just the direct pay components. Now when we talk, because these are very, very important when we are designing structures. So when we talk about direct pay, which we said cash, that is money. So the first and the most important component we talk about in direct pay is base pay. Base pay is not basic pay. Don't misunderstand base pay with base pay. Now base pay means when you actually give a contract, an appointment order to an employee, you say, hey, this is your minimum guaranteed salary. Whether you work, whether you perform up to the standard, whether you perform below the standard, I as an employer have to pay you. Okay, so that is the guaranteed salary. So when we say base pay, it is guaranteed salary or wages which you have promised to give an employee. Okay, is that very clear? Now that base pay, we will now come and work on it as to, hey, how is this base pay structured? So that, like for example, I want to give an employee, say Aman, will say, hey, 1 lakh is your base pay. Now if I give 1 lakh to him without any kind of structuring of the salary, what will happen to that salary then, Aman? How much will you get in hand? A lot will be taxed, right?
Yes.
The net salary will be so
70,000, 30%
so
tax.
30% tax.
20%.
But now can I structure it in such a way that you get maximum amount?
Yeah.
So that is the art and science of a compensation manager, who will then structure that base salary, which we'll talk about in a while, saying that what should be the basic, what should be the HRA, and why are we doing that? The other component is variable pay. Now, what is variable pay? As the name suggests, anything variable. It comes with a contingent. That means, either you are working hard, in a hardship allowance. So we'll talk about, so it is not a part of your guaranteed salary.
Conditional.
It is over and above, which is conditional, contingent, okay, to something. Deferred pay, you have worked for it, but you are getting it later. Deferred pay. Like for example, I'll say I have hired a guy and he has to stay for 3 or 4 years. I'll say I promise you retention bonus. That means it's a deferred amount, right? In the first year I pay you some amount, second year I pay you some amount, third year I pay you some amount. Okay. So the three elements in a direct pay are base pay, variable pay, and deferred pay. Let us just look at quickly. Let us go to base pay and talk about. Yeah. So when we are talking about base pay, in order that you get the maximum in your hand, so what is the first thing we do? We then give 30 or 40% as basic, right?
Yeah.
Basic is different from base pay. Basic is 30 or 40% of the base salary. Why? The basic should not be very high or very low, because if you are making it very low, it should not be lower than the payment of minimum wages. Okay. All right. Now basic attracts what? All the statutory, like even your derivation of an HRA, everything is on basic. Your PF, your gratuity, right?
Yes.
So basic is typically, in fact, I will send you all details on how basic is calculated. Because of the paucity of time, I don't want, but I'll send you a case study, and then if you have any doubts, you can talk about it. Okay, right? So typically it is how much? 30 to 40% of
CTC, base pay or
of
CTC.
base pay. Okay. of base, right? Now, what is the other when you're doing a structuring and so that the employee gets, then you have HRA. HRA will be what?
40 to 50%.
Depending on
City.
city and all that, it could be anywhere between
40 to 50.
50%, because 50% is
Yes.
in the metros,
Yeah.
okay,
Metro.
and non-metro is 40,
40.
and 40 to 50 of
Basic.
basic, not base. Now today you have something called, okay, we'll come to that now, LTA.
Travel allowance.
You can take twice in 4 years, right?
Yes.
Which gives
8.3%.
you that tax benefit. Okay, then what do you have? Then you have something like, children allowance. Then I'll just put allowance. Then you have,
I think now with this introduction of this new wage code,
yeah.
I think most of these allowances, except for the basic HRA and
Absolutely.
may call it special or other allowance.
Yes, absolutely. But I just thought I'll give you a do. Now,
Okay. Yeah.
implementation of the wage code is deferred, as you all know. Okay.
Yeah, by August.
But when the wage code will come into play, then your allowances, everything cannot be less than 50%. Okay. So what is going to happen is the impact is that take home will become a little lesser, and all the statutory deductions will be more. So the government has actually deferred it. But so far what is happening is, now I do not know whether they are going to give you an option of old versus new for some time. That is also deferred a little. But I think most of the organizations are still in the old model.
Mm-hmm.
What about your organization? Most of you are still in the old
Yes,
mode?
ma'am. Old. Yes.
Old mode. Okay. So according to that, now if you recall, the conveyance and medical, they are
Both
giving you
stopped.
what? 50,000 as standard
Deduction.
Okay, so that is something which they have made, they have clubbed it. So why do you think? Then over and above everything, when you add up, then there is something called, what is it?
Special allowance.
Special allowance.
Yeah.
What is the special allowance?
It is the balancing figure between all the allowances and whatever is left between the
gross salary. To arrive at the gross salary.
Yeah.
So I just want to give you a clarity. Most of you will have in your payslip something called a special allowance. Okay.
Yes.
Now, what is special allowance? Your own salary, base salary, when it has been structured. When I say structured, why? You are putting into elements which will give you the benefit of tax, right? So when you have structured all those into those elements, you will still have some amount left. So that is then put under special allowance, okay? And it is taxable. It is taxable amount. Special allowance is always taxable amount. Like for example, when we're doing a consulting assignment for one multinational, so the global HR head was asking me, hey, but madam, are you giving something besides this over and above the salary, something called special allowance? Because the name special allowance sounds so. He said, no, it's the part of their salary. What we do is we actually structure the salary, and anything over and above whatever we have the balance, that amount is put under special allowance. Okay, so it's very clear. It's your own money, base salary, when it gets structured, it is then put under special allowance. Okay, guys. So I think most of you know that what are some of those elements which are actually getting the tax benefits. In tax, what are they? Fully exempt.
Partially exempt.
Then, yeah.
Partially
Absolutely.
exempt.
Yeah, partial.
And fully taxed.
And then?
Fully taxed.
Fully taxed. What about bonus? Is it fully taxed? Absolutely. Whenever you get your bonus, it is
yes, it
fully
is taxed.
Taxed. All right. What about your perquisites? Are they fully taxed? Yes, they are fully taxed. Okay. Yeah, I just thought I'll give you this clarity. Okay, let's go to that. Oh. Okay. All right. So this is clear, guys. Base pay. Okay. So to give the best, to give their employee more in hand, we need to structure it and structure it on the basis of tax. What are the best availability? What are the tax deductions you can get, and what are fully exempt, what are partially exempt, and then you can actually structure the salary. Now, when we come to variable, yeah. So what kind of variables typically, when we talk about variable, what kind of variables do we have in organizations? Anybody? So variable pay, yeah, somebody was talking, yeah.
Child education allowance.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So, okay, let me give you a little. So variables, when we talk about variables, we talk
Related to
about
sales targets or something. Incentives.
incentive. Okay.
Targets, achieving of targets and all.
Incentive. Why do we give incentives? It could be
Motivation.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Performance.
To drive performance.
Do we give incentives for driving performance? Yes.
Yeah.
But here what I want to talk about is, I need to understand first of all, is this job has much elasticity to perform in the same time frame? For example, Venkat is the best choice. In his company, the salespeople, two salespeople, one guy, two guys, there will be a difference in the productivity working in that same time frame. One can make 100 units and the other can make 1000 units. Is that so, Venkat?
Absolutely.
Huh? Why? The job itself has elasticity. So there, what will you do? The variable pay will be much higher. You get it?
Yeah.
The performance linked incentive will be higher. But if there is a job like an HR or a finance, and I actually make a very high proportion of variable pay, is it justifiable then?
No.
The job itself does not have elasticity, so therefore the variable component will be much lesser. Are you with me, guys, now? So jobs where they are target oriented, okay, operational, like for example productivity places, shop floor, making 100 units, 200 units. So wherever the job has elasticity, there you can actually have high variable. And wherever the jobs typically support functions where there is no scope, you can have less variable, okay, for performance. Now in incentive, you also have something called hardship. What does this mean?
Probably working in such a location which is
absolutely, or say for example there are two receptionists, okay, similar role, but one receptionist actually has to come, stay back late in the night, work very hard because she is actually the receptionist for the CEO. So there's too much of work. So is she entitled for then hardship based allowance?
Yeah.
Right? Because she is doing over and above what is she supposed to be doing.
Right.
So that's called hardship based. For example, crane allowance, for example, rig allowance, for example, night shift allowance. All these are, you are coming, you are doing, something, you are having a hardship. So most of the people, call center people, you keep the base structure same, but because you're working in the night, you get a night shift allowance. Like for example, in a bank, there is a teller, cashier. So over and above, he gets a cashier allowance, if you know that. Okay. So anything over and above what you are supposed to be doing. So incentive, performance and hardships. Now in variable pay, there is something called merit. What's the difference? What is merit pay? Have you heard of merit pay? Now, what is merit pay? Merit pay can be in two ways. One is for cross skill. Okay. And the other for upskill. Now, when we are talking about cross skill or upskill, what does it mean? Upskill is for career growth. You have actually got some certification which will encourage you to grow up. In most of the organization, what happens, they have something called a set of competencies or skills, and they make the employees accountable, saying that, hey, this is your kind of a career growth, and if you keep increasing your skills or competencies, then you will be paid certain kind of incentive salary, and then there is also career growth. Okay. And likewise, cross skill. Say for example, in a manufacturing organization, I'm a fitter. Okay. Then I also get some kind of an for an electrician certification. So they promote this. So that, why do you think they promote this? Getting competencies or skill sets in addition to what they are doing. How does the organization benefit?
It leads to enhanced
Multitasking.
productivity.
Multitasking.
And also finding that particular skill will be little expensive.
Such organizations do not pay excellently. They are not the top-notch salary payers. What happens is, the advantage, it's a win-win
Multitasking.
situation for organizations. Why? A, you are increasing the employability of the employee. At the same time, it's like a backup. Somebody is absent, you don't have to actually hire people for every skill. So the advantage here is that you have a ready-made skill available, you have a ready-made competence available who can actually fill that slot. So most of the organizations today, what happens, they're promoting cross-skilling and upskilling, so that they are taking care of absenteeism, turnover. What happens? Somebody is not there, attrition is there. Somebody can always fill his vacuum, fill that place, and work need not be stopped. You getting me? So that's the kind of an advantage. So today, most of the organizations, as a matter of career growth prospects, they are giving merit pay for cross-skilling and upskilling. So when we are talking about variable pays, if you have noticed, so we are looking at several of them. Hardship allowance, right? We talked about it. Performance incentives, we talked about it. Merit pay for extra skills. Citibank, what does Citibank do? It keeps giving extra increments for people who actually acquire certifications. For example, you are in a manufacturing organization and you have a very quality focus. So you are getting a Six Sigma certification or a TPM certification, then you get a special incentive. Okay. Then the most important thing is, suddenly there is a huge demand for a certain skill, and you are having a shortage of that. Then what happens? You are giving something called a hot skill bonus. I'm sure all of you are aware of it, right? We are also calling it as market linked retention bonus. Why do you think we should be giving this market linked retention bonus? Say for example, suddenly you find that cloud computing has become very, very critical, and there are a lot of startups who are starting this cloud computing. Now, what happens? You don't give any hot skill bonus. Your employees who have that cloud computing will go away, right? So in most of the IT organizations, at the beginning of the year, they list out 10 to 15 set of competencies or skill sets, which they say, hey, these are going to be hot skills, because going by the market intelligence reports, there are many startups which are coming up, so they may actually poach. So we have to be ready for it, and we need to actually then give for the next 1 year or 2 years a hot skill allowance. Now, alternately, you may say, hey, but why can't I actually increase his base pay? What happens if I'm going to actually factor it in his base pay?
Cost will automatically the cost for the entire year will increase.
Exactly. The cost is going to increase. He's going to carry that cost. It will be factored in. It becomes a wage cost for us.
And he might stay or may not be staying with the company.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are many ways actually how you can factor in such things. Like for example, you have hired a person at a max level and now you cannot even promote him. What do? You give him a lump sum allowance, right? You are not going to give him an additional increment, because if you give additional increment, that will again attract other benefits. Okay. Okay. Any questions, guys, in variable pay?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Venkat, any questions here?
No, Nirmala.
Okay.
Very clear.
Deferred pay. What is deferred pay?
Commitment of paying in a future period.
In maybe 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So typically, say for example, I told you retention bonus, it will be a deferred pay, or annuity. What do you understand by annuity when we talk about annuity? Annuity is nothing but it's guys typically middle and top level people to save taxes. What happens then? You say, hey, why don't you actually then certain portion of it make it as an annuity plan, so that when you retire or when you leave the company, it gives you a tax benefit, because as per the government it gives you a tax benefit, right? And you are also getting that money with interest. Otherwise what happens? It goes away as tax. Okay, so that's called a annuity plan. Something like this NPS, that is the pension scheme. Okay. Now, most of the companies give stocks.
Nirmala, this annuity thing.
Yeah.
Can you just give an example of this? Superannuation is not. Is it an annuity sort of a deferred pay? Because some of the companies give. So one is the gratuity thing. The other is some companies also give superannuation allowance, depending upon the number of years the person has served for the company.
But even superannuation, you have to opt for it. It is, you know, what happens typically wherever your salaries are huge. For example, your middle level people or a top level people. Now that's where you need to actually structure and say, how do you save their salaries? So you will actually then recommend saying that you could go for a superannuation, right? What does it mean? Some portion of the amount which can be actually given a tax rebate. So and especially after the retirement, then you get it as some portion of it, you get it as lump sum, and some portion again it goes as pension. Okay. Now what is annuity? Annuity is again when you retire. It acts like a superannuation in addition to that, but this is called an annuity plan because it gives you a lump sum amount. Okay. Because what happens, they take this money and then the organization, what it either gives it to some insurance company or other company where they invest it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Fine. Okay,
it is not that the company is going to keep it with you and then how can they give you money? Okay.
All
right. Yeah. Then of course every company, you know, especially for the middle and the top, and today of course most of the IT companies are offering stocks. Yes, why do we give stocks? Obviously it's a retention tool, no? And stocks, they come with what? Saying you don't get stocks on the first day of your employment. Okay. So after 2 years you'll say, hey, this guy is good. So you'll say, here is it, 500 stocks or 1,000 stocks at this. So even the cost of the stock is also decided, and they'll say there's a vesting period. It could be 2 years, it could be 3 years. So that is a useless paper if you are going away right away. But only after 2 or 3 years, if you have stayed on for the vesting period, then you can then exercise that option of that paper. It comes alive and then you can exercise it. But say, for example, they have offered at 10 rupees, but in the market you're getting 5 rupees. Is it a wise thing to buy, exercise that option? So you will say, hey, but this is expensive. But then you also have that option of exercising it within a time frame. It could be 6 months, 1 year, etc. No, within which you can, maybe the market again will go up or something like that. It's not that for all times to come you can actually exercise it. Okay. So then you buy the shares, and obviously then, you know, again there's a lock-in period for it. So deferred pay because it is deferred. It's being paid after some time. So these are the direct pay components which you have to know as a component manager. For Aarti, who's a new person, Aarti, are you in sync with them?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when we talk about indirect pay, everything which is in kind. Okay, like you may say, hey, but even this protection, like for example, the PF and the gratuity, but then they are retirals. They may be in cash, but they still become the part of the indirect pay. So in indirect pay, you will typically look at, see, pay for time not worked. Like for example, your vacations,
LTA.
which are statutory. Like for example, your maternity leave, and paternity is not a statutory. Paternity is still a benefit, which few and most of the organizations today are giving it. Okay, then something like services and perquisites, like you can have recreation, financial planning, low cost meals, etc. And then all your protection programs in terms of insurance, claims, pensions, social security, etc. So some of them are mandatory, but some could be over and above whatever is required by the statutory, right?
Ma'am, Ram here.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah.
how can meals come under protection program?
What are protection programs? Protection programs are all that provident fund, gratuity, ESI. Some of the protection programs are mandatory as per the statutory act, right?
That I got it. My
Yeah.
question is, how can meals come under protection program? You have in this
Wait,
slide.
no, guys. This meal is not a protection program.
Okay.
Sorry. No. I'll clear it off. Yeah.
Actually, it should be under services and purposes.
It should be here.
Yeah.
Free meals, and that meal has to be here.
I think by mistake. So I just wanted to check out from the other participants and even Nirmala also, because this is a CNB session.
Yeah.
Are there any other components besides what has been mentioned over here? Which could
there'll be many more. This is just to give you a kind of a glimpse. Yeah.
No, Nirmala, more from the perspective of, from the tax saving perspective, any component which can be, it could be a tax saving stuff from that. My question is from that perspective.
See, typically, like for example, there was a lot of contention about what uniform allowance.
Washing allowance, uniform allowance.
Uniform allowance. Now, say for example, unless and until you have a policy stating that my employees have to come in a uniform, particular and so, you cannot actually give an allowance and take a tax rebate without having a policy for that.
Agreed. I
okay.
agree.
So there was a lot of contention. Many a times we would have. So the tax consultant would say the best way is to have a policy, and then you can actually claim it. Why do you think that was actually there? Because many organizations started claiming 50,000, 60,000 under the garb of uniform allowance.
Okay.
Okay. But reimbursements, they're all fully, they're not taxable. For example, a company, if it gives internet allowance, a company gives phone, if a company gives other things, but for the use of the office work, you have to produce receipts, and then you get the reimbursement. And they are not taxable. You are traveling, staying in a 5-star hotel, whatever you're permissible, whether travel, staying, everything. It could be any amount.
Subject to bills.
Subject to bills, and obviously you will have a grade system where, okay, grade 1 entitled for this kind of reimbursement, grade 2 entitled for this, right? But you are going on office work. You are using that for the purpose of your office.
Proofs are required for that.
So reimbursements, bills are required. So it's very, very important. So what happens, most of the organizations today, Save Tax, they give you company leased accommodation. Then they give you something like, if you take a leased car, you can save tax because there again, you can say that you are actually using it for the office. So there are certain ways. And I can send you a paper on that. There are some things. I think even Vilma has already sent it. But nevertheless, we will send that across to you.
Fine.
Okay. With this, we are going to close this units of compensation system because we're going to then work on something else, guys. Any clarifications here? Because this is just to get you an understanding as to, it's very, very important as a component person to understand the components of a compensation system. Okay? Clear?
Yes.
Then we'll take a small break for 10 minutes and get back quickly.